I am Stella, 29 years old, and I was lying on a gurney with my left leg shattered in 3 places, begging the people who gave birth to me to save my future. Before I tell you how I ended up owning the very thing that destroyed their arrogance, tell me where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far this story travels. The smell of a hospital emergency room is something you never forget. It's a mix of rubbing alcohol, old floor wax, and panic. But that night, the sharpest thing in the room wasn't the smell. It wasn't even the blinding white lights overhead or the throbbing, grinding pain radiating from my shin up to my hip. It was the voice on the other end of my phone. My motorcycle had been sideswiped on the I-95. The driver didn't stop. I was lying there, grit from the asphalt still embedded in my cheek, listening to Dr. Evans explain the situation. He was a kind man with tired eyes, and he didn't sugarcoat it. Stella, the damage to the tibia is extensive. We need to operate within the next 6 hours to set the bone properly and repair the nerve damage. If we wait, or if we just cast it as is, you're looking at a permanent disability. Best case scenario, a severe limp. Worst case, loss of function. I had insurance, but it was a high-deductible plan I'd bought when I started my freelance landscape architecture business. I was broke. I had maybe $200 in my checking account. The hospital needed a $5,000 down payment immediately for the specialized hardware the surgeon needed. I was groggy from the painkillers, but I knew I had one option. My parents. I dialed my father's number via FaceTime. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. When the screen connected, the contrast hit me like a physical slap. I was in a gray, sterile room filled with the beeping of monitors. My father, Richard, was standing in brilliant sunlight, wearing a white linen shirt and holding a glass of champagne. Behind him, the water sparkled. Stella, he frowned, bringing the phone closer to his face. You look terrible. What is that noise? Dad, I choked out. I'm at the hospital. I was in an accident. He didn't gasp. He didn't ask if I was okay. He turned the camera slightly to show off the teak deck he was standing on. Well, keep it down, will you? We're christening this Sea Queen. Look at her, Stella. 45 feet of Italian design. Dad, please listen, I said, tears mixing with the blood on my face. My leg is shattered. The doctor says I need emergency surgery, or I'll be crippled. I need $5,000. Just a loan. I'll pay you back with interest, I swear. The camera panned over to my mother, Linda. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses, checking her lipstick in a compact mirror. 5,000. Dad repeated, his voice loud enough for their guests to hear. He laughed, a dry, dismissive sound. Stella, look around. We just bought a boat. Liquidity is a bit tight right now. It's my leg, Dad, I pleaded. I can't work if I can't walk sites. I'll lose my business. Mom finally looked up from her mirror. She didn't look concerned. She looked annoyed. She leaned in toward the phone, her face filling the screen. Oh, honestly, Stella, she sighed. You're always so dramatic. Maybe this is exactly what you need. You've always been too reckless. A limp will teach you responsibility. My breath hitched in my throat. I stared at the woman who raised me. The woman who insisted on the best organic food when I was a toddler but wouldn't spend a dime to save my ability to walk when I was 29. Then my sister's face popped into the frame. Tiffany. The golden child. She was 31, glowing, and holding a shrimp cocktail. Wait, she wants money. Tiffany laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Dad, don't give it to her. She probably just wants to pay off her credit cards. Besides, $5,000. That's my catering budget for next week. She looked right at me through the screen. You'll manage, Stella. You always scrape by like a cockroach. We have to go, sweetie, Dad said, his attention already drifting to a waiter passing by. Don't worry about it. Walk it off. The screen went black. The silence that followed was heavier than the cast on my leg. I let the phone slide from my hand onto the thin hospital blanket. The nurse standing in the corner looked away, embarrassed for me. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the anesthesia to take me under and never bring me back. That was the moment I realized I didn't have a family. I had biological donors. I closed my eyes, accepting my fate. I would limp. I would lose my contracts. I would probably lose my apartment. About 20 minutes later, I heard a commotion in the hallway. Sir, you can't bring that in here, sir. The curtain to my cubicle was ripped back. Standing there was Leo. My older brother. He looked like he'd run 10 miles. He was covered in sawdust. His work boots were caked in mud, and his flannel shirt was stained with sweat. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. I got here as fast as I could, he wheezed. He didn't look at the nurse. He looked straight at my leg, his eyes wide with horror. God, Stella. Leo was the black sheep. The failure, according to Mom and Dad. He was a master carpenter, an artist with wood, but because he didn't wear a suit or drive a luxury car, he was invisible to them. He lived in a tiny studio apartment above a garage and drove a truck that was more rust than metal. Leo, I whispered. They said no. I know, he said, his jaw tightening. I called them right after you called me. Dad told me not to bother him. He walked to the side of the bed. His hands, rough and calloused, scarred from years of working with chisels and saws, reached into his dirty jeans pocket. He pulled out a wad of cash. It wasn't a neat stack of crisp hundreds like Dad carried. It was a messy, crumpled pile of 20s, 10s, and 5s. There was a check mixed in there too. He dumped it on the bedside table. It's $800, he said. I know it's not $5,000. But I can sign whatever payment plan they have. I have a credit score. It's not great, but it's something. I stared at the money. It smelled like sawdust and old paper. Leo, I asked, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. Where did you get $800 in cash on a Tuesday afternoon? He looked away, shifting his weight. Doesn't matter. It does matter, I insisted. I tried to sit up, wincing. You didn't have rent money last week. Where did this come from? He took a deep breath and looked at his hands, those empty, shaking hands. I sold them, Stella. The world stopped. You sold what? The tools, he said softly. The chisel set from Grandpa. The Japanese saws. The router. All of it. I took them to the pawn shop on 4th Street. I burst into tears. Not polite, silent tears. Ugly, heaving sobs. I knew what those tools meant. They weren't just metal and wood. They were his life. They were his career. Without them, he couldn't work. He couldn't create. He had literally sold his livelihood, his ability to put food on his table, just to give me a fighting chance. Why? I cried. Leo, that's everything you have. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was rough, but it was the warmest thing I'd felt all day. Because you're my sister, he said simply. And unlike them, I don't measure people by their net worth. He smoothed the hair back from my sweaty forehead. We'll figure it out, Stell. I'll get a job at the warehouse moving boxes. You just get the surgery. He didn't know it then. I didn't know it then. But that pile of crumpled bills was worth more than my father's entire yacht. That sacrifice was a seed. And we were about to water it with sweat, tears, and a whole lot of rage. My parents thought they had broken me. They thought a limp would teach me responsibility. Instead, they taught me exactly who my enemy was. Dr. Evans was a good man. When Leo explained the situation, that he had put every dollar he had onto that table, and was willing to sign a promissory note for the rest, something in the doctor's expression softened. He saw the sawdust on Leo's shirt. He saw the desperation in my eyes. "We'll make it work," Dr. Evans said. He waived his personal surgical fee, cutting the upfront cost down significantly. It was a kindness I promised myself I would repay one day. The surgery took 4 hours. When I woke up, my leg felt like it was encased in concrete, heavy and throbbing with a dull, distant fire. But I still had it. The recovery room was quiet. Leo was asleep in the uncomfortable plastic chair in the corner, his head lolling back, his mouth slightly open. He looked exhausted. Seeing him there, vulnerable and broke because of me, triggered memories I had tried to suppress for years. The dynamic in our family wasn't new. It was ancient history, written in stone since we were kids. I closed my eyes and let the morphine drag me back to a rainy Tuesday when I was 10 years old. We were at a private school. Dad insisted on it for the status, even though he constantly complained about the tuition. It was pouring rain. A line of luxury cars snaked around the pickup circle. I was standing under the awning, shivering. Leo, who was 16 then, was standing next to me. We were waiting for Dad. Then we saw it. The bright red Ferrari. Dad had leased it that week to impress a client. He pulled up to the curb, the engine purring like a large cat. The passenger window rolled down. Dad leaned over, smiling. But he wasn't looking at me or Leo. "Tiffany. Hop in, princess." Tiffany, 12 years old and already aware of her power, pushed past us. She shook her umbrella off, spraying water on my uniform, and climbed into the leather seat. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" she chirped. "You bet," Dad grinned. Then he looked at Leo and me. His smile vanished. "There's no room for you two in this. It's a 2-seater. You'll have to walk. It's only 2 miles. Builds character." He rolled up the window. I watched through the glass as Tiffany stuck her tongue out at us. The Ferrari peeled away, splashing dirty puddle water onto my socks. Leo didn't complain. He just took off his jacket and draped it over my head. "Come on, Stell," he had said. "I know a shortcut." We walked home in the rain. That was our life. Tiffany got the college fund. Leo got told to get a trade because he wasn't academic enough. Tiffany got a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday. I got Mom's old Honda Civic that broke down every 3 weeks. When I wanted to study landscape architecture, Mom asked why I wanted to be a gardener. When Tiffany failed out of 3 different majors, they threw her a finding herself party in the Hamptons. Back in the hospital room, the harsh beeping of the heart monitor brought me back to the present. I reached for my phone. I shouldn't have done it, but I couldn't help myself. I opened Instagram. The first post on my feed was from Mom. It was a selfie of her and Dad on the boat. They were holding crystal flutes. The caption read, "Nothing matters more than family and the open sea. #blessed #new yacht #sequeen." I scrolled down. Tiffany had posted a video. She was dancing on the deck, holding a bottle of Dom Perignon that cost more than Leo's weekly rent. "Living my best life," she squealed in the video. Sorry for the haters who can't be here. The rage that filled me wasn't hot, it was cold. It was absolute. They weren't just indifferent to my suffering, they were erasing it. To them, my accident was an inconvenience, a smudge on their perfect day that they had simply wiped away. Leo stirred and woke up. He rubbed his face, his hands making a scratching sound against his stubble. "Hey," he rasped. "You're awake. How's the leg?" "It's there," I said. "Leo, about the tools." He waved a hand. "Don't start." "I have to start." You can't work without them. You're a master craftsman, not a warehouse worker. I'm whatever I need to be, he said firmly. Look, I called my landlord. Told him I'd be late on rent. He's giving me 2 weeks. I picked up a shift at the docks starting tomorrow night. It's fine. It wasn't fine. He was lying. Leo had chronic back pain from years of bending over workbenches. Dock work would cripple him. I'm going to get them back, I swore, my voice groggy but fierce. I don't know how, but I'm going to buy your tools back. Leo smiled, a sad, tired smile. Focus on walking first, sis. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, plotting. I thought about the inheritance my grandmother, Mom's mom, had supposedly left. Mom always claimed it was gone, used up for expenses. But looking at the way they spent money on boats and cars while claiming poverty when I needed surgery, I began to wonder. I realized something terrifying: my parents weren't just mean. They were financially reckless narcissists who viewed their children as assets or liabilities. Tiffany was an asset, a trophy to show off. I was a liability. Leo was a write-off. But liabilities have a way of becoming dangerous when you ignore them. My phone buzzed. A text from Tiffany. Hey, heard you're alive. Don't ask Dad for money again, okay? He's super stressed about the mooring fees for the boat. It's really expensive. Be considerate. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Considerate. I typed back 2 words, watch me. Then I blocked her. I looked over at Leo, sleeping uncomfortably in the chair. He had given me everything. Now, it was my turn to build something that would shelter us both, and leave our parents out in the rain. The next 6 weeks were a blur of agony and grit. Rehab was brutal. Learning to walk again felt like trying to balance on a knife edge. Every step sent a jolt of electricity up my spine. But every time I wanted to quit, I thought of Dad's boat. I thought of Mom's lipstick. And I kept moving. I moved into Leo's tiny apartment because I couldn't afford my rent and the medical bills. It was a studio above a mechanic's garage. It smelled of oil and old timber. I slept on the pull-out couch, Leo slept on a mattress on the floor. It was humble, but it was home. For the first time in my life, I felt safe, because I was with someone who actually gave a damn about me. Leo was killing himself. He worked the night shift at the docks, loading crates from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. He came home gray-faced, his back spasms so bad he sometimes had to crawl to his mattress. But he never complained. He'd just heat up some instant noodles, crack a joke about my crutches, and pass out. I tried to keep my business afloat from the couch. I was calling contractors, sketching designs on my iPad, trying to reassure clients that, yes, I could still manage their garden renovations despite the leg. But I was losing jobs. People saw the cast and the wheelchair, and assumed I was out of the game. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. I was sitting at Leo's small kitchen table, staring at a pile of overdue bills. The final notice stamps were bright red. We were drowning. There was a knock at the door. I grabbed my crutches and hobbled over. Standing in the hallway was a man I didn't recognize. He was older, maybe in his 60s, wearing a suit that cost more than our entire building. He had silver hair and eyes that looked like they could appraise a diamond in 2 seconds. He held a wooden box in his hands. "Does Leo Vance live here?" he asked. His voice was deep and authoritative. "Who's asking?" I said, leaning on my crutch, defensive. "My name is Arthur Sterling," he said. My heart skipped a beat. Arthur Sterling. The real estate mogul. He owned half the skyline downtown. "Leo's asleep," I said. "He works nights." "I know," Sterling said. He looked at the box in his hands, then at me. "May I come in? It concerns this." He opened the box. Inside, resting on blue velvet, were Leo's chisels. The ones he had sold. I stepped back, stunned. How did you get those? Mr. Sterling walked in and placed the box on the wobbly table. I was browsing the pawn shop on 4th. I collect antique woodworking tools. I saw these. They aren't just tools, young lady. They are extensions of a master's hands. The wear patterns, the sharpening angle, whoever owned these is a genius. He looked around the cramped apartment. The pawnbroker told me the story. Said a young man came in crying, sold them for pennies to pay for his sister's surgery. Leo stepped out of the bathroom, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He froze when he saw the man. Those are mine, Leo whispered. They are, Mr. Sterling said. And I'm returning them. No charge. Leo's knees almost buckled. He reached out and touched the handle of a chisel like it was a holy relic. Sir, I can't repay you. I don't want your money, son, Sterling said. He pulled a folded set of blueprints from his jacket pocket and spread them over our pile of unpaid bills. I just bought the old harbor marina, Sterling announced. It's a dump right now. Rotting wood, crumbling paths. I want to turn it into the elite marina. A members-only, high-end yacht club. But I don't want plastic and concrete. I want wood. I want soul. I want landscape architecture that flows with the ocean. He looked at Leo. I want you to lead the woodwork restoration. Custom docks, clubhouse interior, everything. Then he turned to me. He pointed to the iPad on the table, where my sketches were open. And you? You're the landscape architect, aren't you? The sister. Yes, I said, straightening up as much as I could. I've seen your portfolio online. You have an eye for structure. I need someone who understands how to blend luxury with nature. Can you handle a $10 million project while recovering from surgery? The room went silent. This was it. The lifeline. The lottery ticket. I looked at Leo. He was staring at the blueprints with a hunger I hadn't seen in years. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice steady. I can design this in my sleep. And my brother is the best craftsman in the state. Good, Sterling smiled. Because I'm on a tight timeline. 6 months. If you pull this off, you don't just get a salary. You get 2% equity in the club. Each. Equity. Ownership. Residual income. We're in, Leo and I said in unison. One condition, Sterling said, his eyes twinkling. I heard about your family. The pawnbroker likes to talk. Nobody knows you're doing this. I want this to be a surprise. I want the world to see the talent, not the drama. Deal, I said. As soon as the door closed behind him, Leo and I screamed. We hugged, him being careful of my leg, jumping up and down in that tiny, oil-smelling apartment. We had our tools back. We had a job. And we had a secret weapon. We were hungry, and we were angry. While we were celebrating, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Facebook. Dad had posted again. Sad news. The mechanic says the Porsche needs a new transmission. Expensive. Being wealthy is such a burden sometimes. Hashtag first world problems. I looked at the phone, then at the blueprints. Keep your Porsche, Dad, I whispered to the screen. Because we're building the road you're going to crash on. The storm was over. Now, we were building the hurricane. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life, but also the most exhilarating. We lived a double life. To the outside world, Leo was still a broke laborer, and I was the crippled girl living on her brother's couch. But inside the gates of the old harbor marina, we were kings. Mr. Sterling wasn't kidding about the timeline. We worked 18-hour days. I was on site at 5 a.m. every morning, maneuvering my wheelchair through the mud, barking orders at contractors twice my age. Pain became my coffee. If my leg throbbed, I worked harder. I designed winding paths lined with seagrass and imported limestone. I created privacy gardens for the VIP slips. I poured every ounce of my frustration into the soil. Leo was a machine. He set up a workshop in one of the old hangars. He wasn't just fixing docks, he was creating art. He hand-carved the mahogany railings for the clubhouse. He built a reception desk from reclaimed driftwood that looked like a wave crashing onto the shore. Mr. Sterling watched us like a hawk, but he rarely interfered. He saw the fire in us. He saw that we were fighting for our lives. Meanwhile, the Golden family was starting to tarnish. Information travels fast in small towns, especially when you have a friend like Sarah who works at the bank. Sarah told me over coffee one Sunday that Dad was trying to refinance the house. "It's the boat," Sarah whispered, looking around to make sure no one heard. "The maintenance fees are killing him. Plus, the fuel costs. He's underwater, Stella. Literally and figuratively." I stirred my coffee, feeling a dark satisfaction. "What about the Porsche?" "He pawned the title," Sarah said. "High-interest loan. He's trying to keep up appearances, but he's bleeding cash." A week later, I got a text from Tiffany. "Hey sis. Long time no see. How's the leg? Listen, I'm in a bit of a jam. Some investments didn't go as planned. Do you think you could sign over your portion of Grandma's inheritance trust? Mom said there might be a little left, but they need your signature to release it. It's for family emergency." I stared at the phone. Inheritance. The word triggered a memory. Grandma had left a trust specifically for education and medical needs. Mom had always told me it was empty. Now suddenly there was something left and they needed my signature. I didn't reply. Instead, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, I called the most shark-like estate attorney in the city, using the retainer fee from my first paycheck from Sterling. "Find out where the money went," I told him. "Audit everything." Back at the marina, the transformation was nearly complete. The elite marina was breathtaking. It wasn't just a parking lot for boats, it was a sanctuary. One evening, late, Leo and I were sitting on the end of the main dock. The water was glass. The smell of fresh varnish and salty air surrounded us. My leg was out of the cast, and I was walking with a cane now, gaining strength every day. "Do you think they'll come?" Leo asked, looking out at the horizon. "To the opening?" I nodded. Sterling sent invitations to everyone with a net worth over $1 million in the county. Dad's ego won't let him miss it. He thinks he's still a player. "They don't know we built this," Leo said, running his hand over the railing he had sanded to perfection. "No," I said. "They think you're moving boxes and I'm on disability." Leo chuckled. It was a deep, genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. "I almost feel sorry for them." "I don't," I said sharply. "Remember the boat, Leo. Remember you'll manage. Remember them leaving me to rot." Leo's face hardened. "You're right." 2 days before the grand opening, Mr. Sterling called us into the newly finished clubhouse office. It was a room with floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the harbor. "It's perfect," Sterling said, looking at the finished project. "Better than I imagined. You two didn't just work, you poured your souls into this." He slid 2 thick envelopes across the mahogany desk. "The ownership papers," he said. 2% equity as promised. "But I've made a change." I froze. Was he backing out? "I'm getting too old to manage the day-to-day of a place like this," Sterling said, lighting a cigar. "I need a CEO. Someone who knows every bolt and every bush." He looked at me. "Stella, I want you to run it. CEO of Elite Marina. Salary of $250,000 a year, plus bonuses. My mouth fell open. And Leo, Sterling turned to my brother. I'm putting you in charge of facilities and the custom fabrication shop. You can take outside commissions. You're going to be the most sought-after woodworker on the East Coast. I looked at Leo. He was tearing up. There is one catch, Sterling said, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. What is it? I asked. Your parents RSVP'd, Sterling said. They requested a VIP slip for their boat, the Sea Queen. They want to move it here because their old marina evicted them for non-payment. I felt a smile spread across my face. A smile that was all teeth. Let them come, I said. Let them bring the boat. The trap was set. The cheese was in the mousetrap. And the rats were hungry. The night of the grand opening was electric. The air smelled of expensive perfume, champagne, and the ocean breeze. String lights twinkled above the docks like low-hanging stars. A jazz band played softly in the background. The parking lot was filled with Rolls-Royces, Lamborghinis, and Bentleys. I stood in the CEO's office on the second floor, looking down at the crowd through the tinted glass. I was wearing a tailored navy jumpsuit and heels, not high ones, but heels nonetheless. My cane was gone. I stood tall. Leo was next to me, looking uncomfortable but handsome in a bespoke suit. He kept tugging at his collar. Relax, I said, fixing his tie. You own the place. Acts like it. There they are, Leo pointed. A rented Lincoln Town car pulled up to the valet. My stomach tightened. Out stepped Dad, wearing a tuxedo that was slightly too tight. Mom was in a sequined gown that screamed desperate for attention. And Tiffany. Tiffany was wearing a dress that looked like it cost more than my surgery. They walked in with their chins held high, scanning the crowd, looking for people to impress. I watched as they grabbed glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and immediately started schmoozing with the mayor. It's showtime, I said. We made our way downstairs. We didn't rush. We walked through the crowd, shaking hands with members, accepting compliments on the architecture and the woodwork. I saw the moment Dad spotted us. He was laughing at someone's joke, and then his eyes locked onto me. He froze. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. He nudged Mom. She turned, squinting. Her jaw dropped. They didn't see the daughter they had abandoned. They saw a woman in power. They saw Leo, the disappointment, looking like a millionaire. They rushed over, pushing past a waiter. Stella. Leo. Dad hissed, his face flushing red. What on earth are you doing here? Did you sneak in? You're going to embarrass us. Keep your voices down, Mom whispered frantically. Security will throw you out. Look at you, Stella, wearing that. Is that silk? Where did you get the money? Did you steal it? Tiffany laughed nervously. Did you guys get jobs as waitstaff? Leo, get me a refill. I looked at them. Really looked at them. They were small. They were petty. And they were terrified. We're not staff, Tiffany, Leo said, his voice deep and steady. Before they could respond, the music stopped. Mr. Sterling walked onto the small stage set up on the main deck. He tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Sterling boomed. Welcome to the elite marina. Tonight marks a new standard in luxury. But I didn't build this alone. I want to introduce you to the visionaries behind this masterpiece. He gestured toward us. Please welcome my partners, the master craftsman Leo Vance, and the new CEO of Elite Marina, Stella Vance. The spotlight hit us. The crowd erupted in applause. The color drained from my parents' faces. It happened in slow motion. Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Mom clutched her pearls. Tiffany dropped her clutch. I walked up to the microphone, Leo beside me. I looked out at the sea of faces, and then I locked eyes with my parents. Thank you, I said into the mic. This project is about resilience. It's about taking something broken and making it strong. It's about knowing the value of things. I paused. The crowd went silent. My brother Leo sold his tools to save my life when no one else would, I said, my voice echoing over the water. That is the foundation of this club. Loyalty. Sacrifice. Family. The crowd cheered for Leo. He blushed and waved. I stepped down and walked straight to my parents. They were trembling. CEO. Dad choked out. Partner. Yes, Dad, I said calmly. We built this. That's wonderful. Mom stammered, switching instantly to her fake charm. She reached out to hug me. Oh, my brilliant girl. I always knew you had it in you. We're so proud. I stepped back. Her arms embraced empty air. Don't, I said. Stella, honey, Dad said, sweating profusely. This is great. Listen, about the slip, we brought the Sea Queen over. The harbor master said there's a hold on it. Can you clear that up for us? Just a family discount. I smiled. It was the moment I had waited for. Actually, Richard, I said, using his first name. There is a problem. I reviewed the application personally. And? You don't meet the financial requirements for membership, I said loud enough for the mayor standing nearby to hear. And regarding your boat, it's been impounded. Impounded? Dad shrieked. By who? By me, I said. I bought the debt on your mooring fees from your old marina this morning. And since you defaulted on the payment plan for the boat itself, the bank was very happy to let me step in as the lien holder. You own our boat? Tiffany screeched. I own the boat, I confirmed. And until you pay the $15,000 in back fees, and the $50,000 outstanding on the loan, it stays chained to my dock. And you are trespassing on private property. I signaled to the security guards, big guys who used to work with Leo at the docks. Please escort these guests out, I said. They're not members. As the guards grabbed Dad's elbows, he looked at me with a mix of fury and disbelief. I'm your father. You can't do this. I drove a Porsche. You drove a leased Porsche, Dad, I said. And I drive this company. Goodbye. They were dragged out, screaming, while the elite of the city watched and whispered. The party continued into the night, but the real work happened the next morning. I was sitting in my office, drinking black coffee. Leo was sitting on the sofa, looking at the security footage of our parents being escorted out. He didn't look happy, but he looked relieved. The weight of 30 years of neglect was lifting off his shoulders. My secretary buzzed in. Ms. Vance. Your parents are here. They say they have an appointment. Let them in, I said. They walked in. But they weren't the arrogant socialites from the night before. They looked small. Defeated. They were wearing casual clothes, jeans and sweaters. No jewelry. They sat down in the chairs opposite my desk. Tiffany wasn't with them. Stella, Dad started, his voice trembling. We need to talk. We're listening, I said, gesturing to Leo. Look, Dad rubbed his face. We messed up. We know that. But humiliating us in front of the whole town. Impounding the boat. That's cruel. Cruel? Leo spoke up. Cruel is buying a boat while your daughter's leg is shattered. Cruel is telling your son to walk in the rain while you drive a Ferrari. Cruel is letting me sell my grandfather's tools because you wanted to save face. Mom started to cry. Not the fake tears for Instagram. Real, terrified tears. We're broke, she sobbed. Stella, we have nothing. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. The Porsche is gone. The boat was all we had left to leverage. If we lose it, we go bankrupt. I looked at them, and for a second, I felt a twinge of pity. But then I remembered the lawyer's report sitting in my drawer. Where did Grandma's money go? I asked quietly. The room went deadly silent. Dad paled. What? The trust fund, I said. Grandma left $200,000 for our education and medical needs. I had my lawyer audit the account. It's empty. Where did it go? Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at the floor. We invested it, Dad lied. No, I said, opening the file. You didn't invest it. You spent it. Vacations. Cars. And gambling debts. I tossed a stack of photos on the desk. They were surveillance photos my lawyer's investigator had taken. Photos of Tiffany at casinos. Photos of wire transfers from the family account to online betting sites. Tiffany. Mom gasped, picking up a photo. No. Tiffany she's an angel. She's just unlucky. Tiffany has a gambling addiction, I said brutally. And she's been stealing from you for years. That catering business she started. A front. That investment she lost. Blackjack tables in Atlantic City. She drained Grandma's fund with your help, and then she drained you. Dad looked like he was having a heart attack. But she said she was making millions. She's broke, Dad, Leo said. Just like you. The difference is, we're not. I leaned forward. It was time to set the terms. Here is the deal, I said. I'm not going to sue you for embezzling the trust fund, even though I could put you both in jail for fraud. Mom let out a sob of relief. However, I continued, my voice ice cold. You are going to sign over the title of the boat to me today. Whatever equity is left in it, I'm keeping as repayment for the surgery you refused to pay for, and the theft of my inheritance. But that's our last asset. Dad pleaded. It's not an asset, Richard. It's a liability you can't afford. I'm doing you a favor. I'm stopping the bleeding. And one more thing, Leo. Life at the elite marina had settled into a rhythm of high-stakes luxury and grueling hard work. But it was good work. Honest work. The kind of work that lets you sleep at night without needing a glass of wine or a sleeping pill. I was no longer just the girl with the cane. I was the CEO who turned a failing, rotted dockyard into the premier yacht club on the eastern seaboard. My legs still ached when it rained, a lingering reminder of the asphalt and the rejection, but the limp was gone. I walked with a stride that made people step out of my way. Leo was thriving. His custom fabrication shop, Vance Woodworks, was booked out for the next 18 months. He had hired 3 apprentices, young kids from the rough side of town, who reminded him of himself. He was teaching them how to respect the grain of the wood, how to be patient, how to build things that lasted. Seeing him laugh with those kids, covered in sawdust but radiating pride, healed a part of me I didn't know was broken. But while we were rising, the Golden family was in freefall. I kept tabs on them. Not out of obsession, but out of necessity. You don't turn your back on a snake just because you cut off its tail. Dad and Mom had been forced to downsize. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment near the airport. The Sea Queen was sitting in my dry dock, impounded, a massive white elephant that they couldn't afford to sail and couldn't afford to keep. Tiffany had vanished from social media. Rumor had it she was in a court-ordered rehab facility for her gambling addiction, part of a plea deal for some bad checks she wrote in Vegas. The family name, once polished to a shine, was now mud. I thought it was over. I thought we had established the boundaries. But desperate people do desperate things. On a Tuesday morning, a courier arrived at my office. He handed me a thick envelope marked Urgent Legal. I opened it. My heart hammered against my ribs as I scanned the document. It was a lawsuit. Richard and Linda Vance versus Stella Vance. They were suing me for parental support and maintenance. They were claiming that under an obscure state law, financially capable adult children were responsible for their indigent parents. They were demanding $5,000 a month in alimony-style support, claiming destitution caused by predatory lending practices regarding the boat. They were blaming me for their bankruptcy. They were trying to garnish my wages. I slammed the papers down on my desk. The audacity was breathtaking. They refused me $5,000 to save my leg, and now they wanted $5,000 a month to fund their retirement. I grabbed the phone and called Mr. Reed. Reed was the family lawyer who had represented my parents for decades. He was the one who helped them set up the trusts, the one who helped them buy the house. He was a shark in a three-piece suit. If they had him on their side, this was going to be ugly. "Mr. Reed," I said when his assistant put me through. "This is Stella Vance. I just received a summons." "Ah, Stella," Reed's voice was smooth, like expensive scotch. "I was expecting you to call. You're representing them?" I asked, my voice tight. "After everything they did? You know they embezzled my trust fund." "Actually, Stella," Reed said, and I could practically hear him smiling. "I'm not representing them. They couldn't afford my retainer. They're using a public defender for their bankruptcy, and a strip mall lawyer for this lawsuit. I'm calling because I want to represent you." I paused. "Excuse me. I like winners, Stella," Reed said. "And frankly, your parents have been a liability to my firm for years. Late payments, questionable tax filings, constantly ignoring my advice. I've been waiting to cut ties. Representing you against them seems like the most ethical way to close the chapter." "You want to switch sides?" "I'm not switching sides," Reed corrected. "I'm choosing the side of the law. Come to my office. Bring the trust fund audit. We're going to end this." The meeting at Reed's office was the final nail in the coffin. Reed didn't just have defenses, he had ammunition. He laid out the financial history of Richard and Linda Vance. It was worse than I thought. They hadn't just spent my trust fund. They had committed tax fraud for 5 years, claiming business deductions for family vacations and Tiffany's gambling losses. "Here's what we do," Reed said, tapping a file. "We countersue. Not for money, they don't have any. We countersue for fraud and embezzlement. And we send a copy of these tax returns to the IRS as leverage." "I don't want to send them to prison," I said, looking at the numbers. "I just want them to leave us alone. Forever. Then we make them an offer they can't refuse," Reed said. 2 days later, we sat in a mediation room. Dad looked gray. His suit was wrinkled. Mom looked fragile, her hands shaking as she held a cup of water. Their lawyer, a nervous man in a cheap suit, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Reed didn't waste time. He slid a single piece of paper across the table. "This is a drop-hands settlement," Reed said. "You drop the lawsuit for support. You sign a permanent restraining order preventing you from contacting Stella or Leo. You publicly retract any statements blaming Stella for your financial situation." "Why should we?" Dad blustered, though his voice lacked its usual power. "She's rich. She owes us. We raised her." "Because," Reed said, sliding a second folder across the table, "if you don't sign this in the next 5 minutes, I am going to email this folder to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. It contains proof of 5 years of tax evasion. You won't get alimony, Richard. You'll get 5 to 10 years in federal prison." The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. Dad opened the folder. His face went white. He looked at Mom. Mom started to cry, silently this time. "You wouldn't," Dad whispered, looking at me. "I'm your father. I leaned forward. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt exhaustion. You ceased being my father the day you bought a boat instead of saving my leg, I said. You ceased being my father when you let Leo sell his soul to fix your mistake. Sign the paper, Richard. Or go to jail. It's your choice. Dad's hand shook as he picked up the pen. He didn't look at me. He signed. Mom signed. They left the room without a word. They looked like ghosts. They were free, but they were trapped in a prison of their own making, poverty, shame, and the knowledge that they had thrown away the only people who would have actually cared for them in their old age. That afternoon, I went down to the dry dock. The Sea Queen was there propped up on blocks. It was a beautiful boat, objectively. Sleek lines, Italian leather seats. But to me, it looked like a monster. Leo walked up beside me, wiping his hands on a rag. So, he said. It's ours now. Fully legal. Yeah, I said. What do you want to do with it? Keep it. Rename it. The Revenge has a nice ring to it. I laughed, but I shook my head. No. I don't want to sail it. I don't even want to look at it. It's tainted, Leo. Every inch of fiberglass on this thing represents $1 that should have gone to our family, but went to their ego instead. So sell it. Sell it, I agreed. But not for profit. We sold the Sea Queen the next week. Because of the market, we got a good price, $180,000. It was a lot of money. Enough to buy a Ferrari. Enough to go on a world tour. But we didn't do any of that. I sat down with Leo in his workshop. The smell of cedar was thick in the air. I've been thinking, I said. There are other people like me. People with insurance gaps. People who have accidents and lose their jobs, their homes, their dignity, just because they can't afford a $5,000 deductible. Leo stopped sanding. He looked at me, understanding dawning in his eyes. We're starting a foundation, I said. The Second Steps Foundation. We use the boat money to pay for emergency surgeries for people who fall through the cracks. We save legs. We save careers. Leo smiled. It was the brightest smile I'd ever seen. That, he said, is better than any yacht. We launched the foundation a month later. Our first recipient was a 19-year-old delivery driver named Marcus. He had shattered his ankle slipping on ice. His parents were working 2 jobs and couldn't afford the surgery. He was going to lose his scholarship to trade school. We paid the bill. All of it. When Marcus walked into the marina 3 months later, limping slightly but walking, to shake my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt whole. My parents had tried to teach me a lesson about responsibility with a limp. Instead, I used that limp to learn how to carry others. A year had passed since the accident. It was a Tuesday evening, much like the one where I had been lying in the dirt on the side of the I-95. But the view tonight was different. I was sitting on the end of the main pier at Elite Marina. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and orange. The water lapped gently against the pilings that Leo had reinforced with his own hands. Leo sat next to me, his legs dangling over the edge. He was holding a cold beer. I had a glass of iced tea. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was full of understanding. I looked at my leg. The scars were still there, jagged pink lines running up my shin where the surgeons had inserted the rods and screws. For a long time, I had hated them. I had worn long pants to hide them, ashamed of the deformity. But tonight, the breeze was warm and I was wearing shorts. The scars were exposed to the world. Does it still hurt? Leo asked, taking a sip of his beer. Only when the weather changes, I said. Or when I've been on my feet too long. But it's a good hurt. It reminds me I'm walking. Leo nodded. He looked down at his hands. They were still rough, still stained with stain and varnish. But on his wrist, he wore a nice watch, a gift I had bought him with my first CEO bonus. Not a Rolex but a sturdy, American-made watch that could take a beating. You know, Leo said softly. I drove by their apartment yesterday. He didn't have to specify who they were. Yeah. Dad was outside. He was washing that old sedan he drives now. He looked old, Stella. Really old. He dropped the sponge and had trouble bending down to pick it up. I watched a seagull dive into the water. Did you stop? No, Leo said. I slowed down. I thought about it. I thought about getting out and helping him. That's what a good son is supposed to do, right? And I realized that he wouldn't have stopped for me, Leo said. If I was on the side of the road, broke and hurting, he would have driven his Porsche right past me to get to a dinner reservation. So I kept driving. It's not cruelty, Leo, I said, reaching over to squeeze his shoulder. It's consequences. We aren't punishing them. We're just letting them live the life they bought. I know, Leo sighed. It's weird. Mourning people who are still alive. We mourned them a year ago, I said. In that hospital room. We mourned the parents we wished we had. The people living in that apartment. They're strangers. I stood up and walked to the edge of the dock. The marina was full. Beautiful yachts bobbed in their slips. The clubhouse was glowing with warm light, filled with members laughing and dining. We had built this. From the ashes of rejection, we had built an empire. But the most important thing we built wasn't the marina. It wasn't the bank accounts. It wasn't even the foundation. It was us. I turned to Leo. Do you remember the tools? I asked. The ones you sold. Hard to forget, he chuckled. Mr. Sterling keeps threatening to put them in a glass case in the lobby. You should let him, I said. Put a plaque under them. What would it say? It would say, the price of love. Leo stood up and brushed the dust off his jeans. He looked at me, and I saw the brother who had always been my hero, even when the world told him he was nothing. You know what the best part is? Leo asked. What? Mom was right, he grinned. Excuse me. I frowned. Mom has never been right about anything in her life. No, she was right, Leo laughed. She said a limp would teach you responsibility. I looked at my leg, then at the thriving business behind us, and finally at my brother. She was right, I smiled. I learned that I'm responsible for my own happiness. I'm responsible for my own worth. And I'm responsible for choosing who my family is. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the salty air. I felt light. The weight of their expectations, their judgment, their neglect, it was all gone. Washed away by the tide. Come on, I said to Leo. I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. And you have a custom table to finish. Yes, boss, Leo saluted playfully. We walked back down the dock together. Two broken kids who glued themselves back together with gold. We didn't look back at the sunset. We looked forward to the lights of the marina, to the future, to the life we had earned. The boat was gone. The parents were gone. The pain was fading. But the love. The love that made a broke brother sell his livelihood to save his sister. That was permanent. That was the only inheritance that mattered. We grow up thinking we owe our parents everything, that we have to tolerate toxicity just because we share a last name. But my journey taught me that family is a title that is earned, not given. My parents had money, status, and blood relation to me, but they were never my family. My brother, with empty pockets and dirt under his fingernails, was the only family I ever needed. There's also a lesson here about financial responsibility versus financial vanity. My parents chased the appearance of wealth, the cars, the boats, the status symbols, and it left them hollow and bankrupt. Leo and I chased the value of work, skills, loyalty, and grit. Real wealth isn't what you can show off on Instagram, it's having the resources to protect the people you love when disaster strikes. I want to hear from you. What is your definition of family? Have you ever had to choose between blood relatives and the people who actually show up for you? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Or if this story resonated with you and you believe that actions speak louder than words, just comment the word good. It lets me know that these lessons are hitting home. Take care of yourselves and remember, don't let anyone define your worth by the limp in your walk. Use it to pave your own path. See you in the next story.